Okay, I start every episode by saying, I am so excited to talk to you. But you and I talked before this, and I admitted I've been a fan of yours since you were at Gravity Tank. I am really excited to talk to you. And we did meet in real life one time in a weird
Yes.
example, in a weird instance.
And a
But
great instance, not
it,
weird. That was
it was,
great.
yeah, but it was weird. Well, okay, first off, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, if you're watching, this is Maris Garcia. Uh, you are going to learn so much about her in the next, few minutes here. Um, I have been so impressed following your career. I've been so impressed that I have tried to emulate what you do and who you are, like Cliff Notes version. I'm like, oh,
Wow.
I think she does this. I want to try to do that. I'm a huge fan of yours.
Thank
Just
you.
like try to tell people, maybe in terms that my mother would understand, what
Mhm.
what do you do professionally?
Yeah. I come from the world of human-centered design. And so I would say human-centered design is a combination of research, strategy, and design to create new things. Could be anything. There's a set of values, methods, a process. I do some or all of that depending on what we're doing. And it could be anything from, my career started with what's the next, you know, camcorder for Samsung, the next shopping experience for furniture at Target. And now I am likely going to jump into a project on what is Illinois' response to mass shooting.
Ah!
So, so it could be any of those challenges, opportunities, using again these values, methods, practices to figure out what to go do in a strategic, creative way.
Okay, so you can see my face, so you can see how
Yeah.
wide I'm smiling, how high up my eyebrows are. If people are
Yes.
just listening to this, in the first 30 seconds, you've blown my mind yet again.
Yeah.
This is insane. So again,
Yeah.
people that are listening, you have these you have a mind and a skill set, a defined skill set and a methodology that allows you to really identify challenges, figure out who's the challenge really for, and try to figure out like
Hmm.
what is a solution that would help these people rather than being like, we're going to build a thing. It's like, no, no. Do these
Hmm.
people need a thing? What type of a thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you gave some examples, camcorders, shopping at Target. How do we
Yeah.
respond to mass shootings? Um, a person with this skill set, not everybody has this skill set, not everybody has
Hmm.
this mindset. And again, you've done it, in my opinion, in some of the most impressive places on the
Thank
planet.
you.
Um, how does somebody get to where you are today? You just
Yeah.
moved, by the way. You're a mother
Yes.
of two, uh, an insane professional, one of the most intelligent and creative people I know. Okay,
Thank you.
just like bring me back.
Maybe I
Like,
don't know if you know me. We should see. Let's see what you say at the end of this.
fair enough, fair enough. And I will tell the story of how we met. But
Okay.
bring me back, like high school Maris. What are you into? What kind of
Yeah.
person are you? What are you
Oh
listening
gosh.
to? Like, how do you get to where you are
Oh
today?
my
High
goodness.
school Maris, who is
Oh
she?
Lord. Wow, that's a great question. High school, I can say like senior year of high school, I took an architecture class. If that helped, like that was there was an architectural drafting class. So that was like senior year of high school. I went to, I guess, graduating, going into college. I had grown up at an overnight camp, and so I was going to be a camp counselor. So I would say those two things probably hold a lot of where my future took me between like design and camp and people. Went to college, did the RA thing, like that,
Okay.
those two things. So that's sort of what I was, I don't know, doing.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up outside Chicago, a suburb called Lincolnwood, just outside the city. Um,
Yeah, I live right there, dude.
yeah, you live right there. Yeah,
I literally
yeah,
live right there. Wait,
yeah.
was
Yeah, I grew
the
up.
bagel shop was there on Tui,
Yeah, the
the New
bagel
York
shop
bagel,
was there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
Grew up right
recently
there.
they just changed their hours for the first time since I've been
I.
alive.
It's like not open 24 hours a day now, right? Is that
Dude,
the issue? Yeah,
I used to get such joy out of telling people they go
yeah,
24/7, 365. And then I
yeah.
went there one night after like a concert, it was like 2 a.m. And I'm like, they're
I mean,
closed?
good for them. They shouldn't be there all the
Yeah, yeah,
time,
that's true.
right? You know.
Wait, did you grow
Anyway.
up with Sam Rosen? Do you know I mean, do you know Sam Rosen?
I don't know if I know Sam Rosen.
Like the desk pass dude, one
Oh,
collect.
my husband knows Sam Rosen. I
Yeah,
don't I
yeah,
don't
okay,
know
yeah, yeah.
Sam Rosen. Did he grow up in Lincolnwood?
He
Really? I
did,
don't
he
know if
did.
I knew that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
his
Yeah.
mother was an artist, and she was the influence for this Netflix series of that stars
Really?
Lily Tomlin about an artist, and the artist is his mother.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I
I
gotta
totally
check
could be
that out.
talking shit. I don't know. I'm pretty sure
That's
that's
really
the
cool.
story.
Okay.
Okay.
I should
Okay,
find
so you
out.
grew up in
Okay.
Lincolnwood. You have this
Yes.
empathetic background, people, camp, nature,
Yes. Yep.
helping
Yep.
others. and then you take this like architecture class, which is kind of like more linear in design. And then what
Yeah.
happens in college? What do you study in college? Where do you go?
Yeah. Kind of right from there. I studied architecture and psychology. Was interested in design. Yeah, right.
The two, right?
It all makes sense. I never went back. I always start in college. I'm like, oh, I guess those things were coming from before there. But I studied architecture and psychology. Was always interested in design and people. Thought those things had to be separate. There was, I always say, in architecture, the only people we spoke about were dead architects. In psychology, there was lots of design, but you would never talk about. It was never referenced as design or thought of as designing anything. And so I graduated and thought, like, okay, I have to choose. Am I going to do something about design? Am I going to do something about people? And like, thank God, found a man who connected me to Gravity Tank very early in my career. And
wait, how early after college did you enter Gravity Tank?
So I went abroad for a year and volunteered, came back home, and then I worked as a building inspector actually in Lincolnwood. It was pretty wild. Had no business doing this, but was inspecting properties and dealing with a lot of chaos, trying to change the building code so that people wouldn't overbuild their properties. I ended up leaving because my parents' house got egged as a response to us passing the building codes. That's another long story. We'll talk about that later.
People
not because of me, but because
okay.
Yeah, it was wild. Anyway, while I was at Gravity Tank, before I was a building inspector, I was interested in product design. So I'd studied architecture, was always kind of overwhelmed by how big it was, how expensive it was, how you could make a drawing and build a model that was, this big. And then suddenly like the real thing was huge. And I always felt like there's such a jump and it's scary. Like a lot of space is not designed well. And I don't know. I just felt like it was too big of a thing for me. And so I thought, products felt a lot more approachable. And it's funny, I'm a minimalist. I don't really like stuff, but I love well-designed things, even if I don't have them myself. And so I was interested in that and product design. And through that, connected to somebody who then connected me to Gravity Tank. I went in and did an informational interview and they were very kind. And I met with two people who said like, yeah, what you're doing makes sense. Or like what you're interested in makes sense. There's this world out here of research and design, but you have no experience. Go get a job and call us later. I think they were 7 people at the time. They weren't hiring. They definitely weren't hiring me because I had no experience in anything. So I got a job, worked as a building inspector, and then 3 years later, when my parents' house got egged, I was like, okay, it's time to call up those places. And really, they were at the top. I think they were like the 20th on my list. This was back in the day when you would call places. Like, I don't even know what the web was, if I knew it existed or not. And they said, sure, send us your portfolio or send us your resume. So I mailed a portfolio and a resume. And that was, and thank God, I don't know, it's a miracle, but they took me and kind of taught me everything I know. So that's how I got the Gravity Tank.
Okay. So by the time again, for folks that are not in this world, Gravity Tank, for again, in my world, that was like it was the place. It was for people that it made sense to. Because again, for folks that are listening, it's like, everything you see, touch, taste, smell, or hear has been designed for a certain purpose or a certain outcome or a certain experience. And sometimes we see things, whether it's a product, we're like, ooh, it feels so good. And I feel good when I have, but most people don't realize all the work that goes into it, the psychology, the ethnography, the research. And so Gravity Tank, again, for folks that don't know, is they took this, what's called a human-centered approach to designing things, either products or services or businesses, right? And this was like, rather than like, I got a great idea, let's build the thing. It's like, wait, who do you think it's for? What problem is it solving? How deep is the problem? When does the problem occur? And when you go through a design process like that is centered around the human that this product, service, or business will solve for, you get a very different outcome, right?
Absolutely.
And so when you say that you study like architecture and psychology, right? Was that what it was in college?
Yeah.
That is the perfect marriage, right? Because psychology comes to like the human and the brain and the emotion and our experience as humans. And then the design, the architecture is kind of like, will the building fall down? Will it be designed well, right?
That's like, engineering. The falling down was not us. It was like, is it laid out well, right? I mean, it should be.
Son, I'll tell you, the oldest we just talked about, he's like, I want to be a civil engineer. And I was like, you hate math. I don't know if this
Uh-huh.
is in your future. Maybe there's somewhere on the continuum of,
Yeah,
civil and urban design where you will live.
possibly.
Okay. So again, Gravity Tank, you land
Yes.
at it is like, in my opinion, it is the pinnacle of a great design, can be,
Yeah.
should be, and will be. And how long were you at Gravity Tank for?
I was there for over 8 years. So
Okay.
it was a really remarkable, intense, um, all the things kind of place. But really, yeah, was very lucky to land there. Not even knowing at the time, I don't even know what we were calling it when I got there. I remember there were versions of, okay, we're this, we're this. I think when I left, we were an innovation consulting firm. Now we talk about the world of human-centered design. I don't even know if that language existed, if we used it when I was there. I don't remember. But yeah, it was great, and I was very lucky. I guess looking back, the company was very small. I think I was like the 17th person there. When I left, it was closer to 100, maybe 90, 85, 90 something people.
Wow.
And I think I had gotten there. I had never known. I was always trying to design things or make things better for people. When I had this
Mhm.
building inspector job, and it was kind of nuts. Um, my colleague and I our job was to do one thing, which was to inspect properties and deal with property maintenance stuff, and make sure construction was being built properly. Um, what I cared about was how the town had a lot of potential. You live right there, so it's like it's right on the edge of the city. It could be really great. It's always like it always could be better, but kind of isn't. And so I had an incredible colleague who was an architect who had come from Croatia, and she was living there and had this vision. And so we kept thinking like we can make this place better. And that wasn't actually part of my job. Like that was what we liked to
Ooh.
do in our job, and we had the freedom to do it. We had a boss who let us
Mhm.
kind of do what we wanted in addition to our work. And so I guess that was something that I didn't know was happening at the time, but I turned my job into what did the stuff I had to do, and then did the stuff I wanted to do. And when I applied to Gravity Tank, the stories I told and the portfolio pages I added um, were non-traditional, but they were us trying to better design this town or improve the streetscape, change the building codes to make it more human, more livable, more in scale and proportion, less flooding. Like those, I was doing stuff that again, I don't even know if I knew that I was doing it. I wasn't necessarily doing it intentionally to get a job, but it was the stuff that I cared about. And again, those are the stories that got me into Gravity Tank without even knowing what design thinking, human centered design,
Mhm.
what it was at the time. I just said, like, here's a situation. It's not, it could be better. Here's what I did to make that situation better. And
Okay,
that,
where does
yeah,
that come? Because that's a big point. I don't want to gloss over this.
yeah.
A thorough, a thread that probably is following with you is making
Hmm.
things better, right?
Hmm.
Not just doing your job, but like the job becomes making things better. I always tell people, for a creative or a designer, one of the hardest things is that everywhere we look, we see a challenge that can be solved. Whether it's like,
Hmm.
why is that door handle vertical and not
Yeah.
horizontal?
Yeah.
Who made that ad campaign? Why is
Yeah.
that light where it
I
is? Like
know.
and
Yeah.
so we do it in service of trying to make things better for people. But
Hmm.
I have to like hit rewind again. Like as a kid, like I heard we
Hmm.
started at high school, but like where does this
Hmm.
empathy and making things better come from? Were your folks similar in this vein? Like what were
Yeah.
they
It's
like?
funny. My mom is a designer, an artist, and my father was an attorney. But he was always helping people. He always had lots of clients who weren't paying him, who he was helping.
Mhm.
So I think,
Okay.
oh, he was always in the soup kitchen. It still is. So I
Okay.
think my dad was, doing the service, and my mom was doing service through design. She would always, volunteer to do the newsletter or whatever it was. But I think, I have memories of my mom having stuff on her easel and stepping back and her squinting and saying which one, this or this. So I grew up with in a basement that smelled like rubber cement glue and with an X-Acto knife, and so there was definitely like always paper and good markers in our house. So I definitely grew up that way. And I even remember when I was a kid, my mom, when she left and started working in a studio, I remember she had like purple walls in the studio she went to work in, and my dad's office was very brown. And I remember being like, I want to work in the purple, a world of like
Oh,
white and purple, right? Versus brown is not my thing. So,
that is
so
deep.
so early I knew there was a design thing. I just didn't know. I didn't know what it would be. But yeah, I think, yeah, the combination of those things has always been part of my life, I suppose.
The example I always bring up is this music video for the band Blind Melon in the 90s, and there's this music
Yeah.
video of this young girl walking the streets of LA. She's in a bumblebee costume, and,
Uh-huh.
everyone's laughing at her and pointing at her and ridiculing her, but then at the end of the video, she's, like, all sad, and she looks up, and she comes across a vacant lot, and it's filled with people wearing the same bumblebee outfit,
Amazing.
and she finds her tribe, her
Yeah.
ohana, her crew, her
Yeah,
community, whatever
yeah.
we call it, and it
Yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds like, is part of your crew, your community, and your work is like making things better, but
Mhm.
specifically making them better through looking at the needs of humans on the
Mhm.
psychological end and the human centered and ethnography, and then
Mhm.
designing things using actual great design methods to make
Mhm.
experiences, services, products just that make people's
Yep.
lives better. Okay.
Yeah.
You've done this a lot of places and you've done some
Yeah.
really cool stuff. Again, my mom probably listens to this,
Yeah.
eh, but but
Same.
again, like Chris Conley's going to listen to this, right? And like, like lots of like
I hope.
executives listen to this. Like,
Uh-huh.
what are some things when you look back? And again, we are no way done with you, the story and the tale
Yeah,
of Maris
yeah.
Garcia. When you start to look back, what are some of the highlights you think about projects you had the privilege to be a part of, things that you can now look back in the world like, I was a part of that. What are some things that jump
Mhm.
out to you as memories?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just, as I'm thinking about this potential project, responding to mass shootings, I was actually just chatting, I think, on LinkedIn with Chris Conley, who you just mentioned, and because we
Wheezy,
had a,
the big one. Wheezy.
and because a woman, we had done work with an organization called Roca. They're a group in Boston, or in Chelsea, outside of Boston, and now they've gone more national. But they get kids off the streets, the kids who have fallen through the cracks, the kids who everyone has given up on, gang members, men who've been convicted or in prison, pregnant young women, like they, young moms, they go after these kids and they help them become part of society and get them, education, get them into jobs, get them clean, get them just really, it's remarkable. Just a total life changing
Wow.
experience to be around this organization. And so when I was learning about this potential project, I had seen that, like, in that same moment, Molly Baldwin, who's the executive director of this program, popped up and LinkedIn, and I was, started listening to her give not a TED talk, but a similar kind of thing, and again, messaged Chris, and we were just talking about, like, oh, how game changing that project was on many levels. It was just remarkable. I highly recommend, check out roca.org, donate money to them. They're remarkable. But one of the things that they did, which honestly led to some of the best work I've ever done in my career, was they had mentioned when we were working with them that they had been successful at getting gang members to come together at first to talk to each other, but they weren't successful at getting them to change their behavior or their lives. Um, until they found with the stages of change. I mean, I will always bring everything back to the stages of change, but there is this behavior
Okay.
change model that I love that they mentioned, which was this Prochaska and DiClementi, these two psychologists. They created this model to help people quit smoking in the 70s and the late 70s and the 80s, and they mapped their programs and their services all around, like, the how this model works, and then
Wow.
they started to see significant change in the lives of these young people. And so fast forward many years later, I was working on this project, had a ton of data. It was all about teachers and how successful teachers. The question was, it was with an organization called One Goal, also an incredible organization, um, trying to get kids to graduate from college. And we were doing doing research to understand how were their most highest performing teachers successful. What was it that was helping them encourage their students, or get their students to increase their grades and test scores? Had a ton of data, couldn't figure out, like, what mattered the most, until I remembered that model that this organization had used, and kind of Googled it and was like, what are the stages of that thing? Posted on the wall, all the data just like flew from one organized board, which wasn't getting anywhere, to another, and it all clicked
Ooh.
and was just the most amazing thing. So that to me, I don't even know, the original question was something about maybe what stood out, but that work with Roca, that behavior change model, applying that model, which is used all the time in healthcare, and in so many ways. I don't know if it's often used in education, but we brought it into the education space, and it just really cracked the problem we had, which was, like, what is it that these teachers are doing? And we were able to map the mindsets and behaviors that students have to this framework, and what the high performing teachers were doing in each stage of that model that was encouraging their students to not encourage, like helping their students actually change their mindsets and behaviors. So
It's interesting. We always
yeah,
say
that
like,
was really exciting.
No, it is, because we see like looking outside. I always tell people like, look outside of your industry. You're having a problem, you need to
Yeah,
look
yeah.
outside your industry. I remember, so I worked in public education for years, and there's this big project we're trying to do, and it was around teacher education. How do we
Mhm.
educate, teachers and change the mindset, specifically around like teaching science, right? And we're
Mhm.
like, hey, if anybody knew how to do this, it'd be done already, right? Like there'd
Mhm.
be something somewhere. So we like boiled it down. We're like, who takes people that have an
Mhm.
altruistic desire to like make good change in the world and
Uh-huh.
train and develop them to the point that at the end of this the development, they're
Uh-huh.
changed for life and they identify
Yeah.
with that thing for life. And one of the examples were like, well, Marines. Like I knew my
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
Marine. If you're a Marine, you're a Marine for life. Like, but what do
Yeah.
they do?
Yeah.
How do they do it? What are
Yeah.
the core
Cool.
tenets? And so again, it's always about like, thinking
Yeah.
about the people you're trying to solve, looking outside of industry, looking for other
Yeah.
examples. It's cool that this one example for you came back full set.
Yeah.
I also have
Oh,
to
yeah.
tell you that as you talked about this opportunity about response to mass shootings,
Mhm.
I love street art. And we just talked
Mhm.
before we got on about the street artist in Chicago, Penny Pinch. And my kids
Mhm.
were little, we would walk the streets, and if whoever would spot a Penny Pinch
Yeah, nice.
sticker, you get to pinch the other people's tush. And my daughter would be like, Penny Pinch, and she squeezed my butt. But when I was a teacher, I think I was a teacher at Chicago Public Schools at the time,
Uh-huh.
and there was just so much violence in our school.
Yeah.
It was horrible. I mean, Chicago, for folks that don't know Chicago, the church in the school are the center of every neighborhood, because when they built the neighborhoods, those were the centers of the neighborhoods. So there's a
Mhm.
school every 3, 4, 5 blocks. And our school would let out at 3 o'clock. The school a few blocks away let out at like 2:45. So their
Mhm.
gangs would be waiting for our gangs every day after
Yeah.
school. And it was insane. And there were shootings and there were fights. And I have enough stories to fill thousands of
Yeah.
hours of podcasts. But I remember at one point I was like, what can I do in my purview,
Mhm.
in my little zone of influence? And at the time I was sketching, I was drawing and sketching a lot. And so I
Mhm.
made these paste ups, like street art. And it was a
Mhm.
young kid with a backwards hat and a speech bubble that said, please stop shooting me. I want to. And
Yeah.
it'd be like, grow up to be a scientist. I want to have a family. And I would go out throughout the day and I would
Wow.
paste these around the city, right? Like a
Yeah.
street artist.
Yeah, incredible.
And I put one of these up. And as I'm walking back to my car, I thought I was slick because it was in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
A cop car pulls up. And
Oh,
this
no.
guy says, this guy leans out the window, uniformed police officer. And
Oh
mind
my
you,
god.
I forgot this part. I had just come from a meeting downtown, like a Board of Ed meeting. I'm in a shirt and tie, and I had one in my briefcase, and I pasted one up. And he goes, hey, man, where can I get one of those stickers you just put up? And I was like, excuse me? I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, dude, we saw you. We were sitting at the corner. You didn't see us. We
Uh-huh.
watched you. You reached it.
Yeah.
You took the brush. We saw you. Put it right there. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally going to get arrested. How am I going to explain this? And so I remember I literally, in a moment of defeat, I just like shoulders shrugged. I walked up to the police car and I was like, listen, man, I'm a Chicago teacher. I am just sick and tired
Uh-huh.
of watching kids get shot. I just thought this was one way I could try to get a positive message out there. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh no, man, we love it. He's like, we want one to bring back
Give me
to
a stack
to
of
the
them.
police
Yeah, yeah,
station.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like,
That's
oh, dude, here
amazing.
you go. And I gave it to him and he
That's
went.
amazing.
So
Yeah. That's
again,
awesome.
what's interesting about that and what we're talking about is like, where can we have impact in an
Mhm.
opportunity to help people in perhaps a non-traditional way? I think
Mhm.
sometimes when people think about large problems like generational poverty, racism, the shootings and violence, the first reaction for a lot of people probably tends to be the same as like, you know, systems change, politicians
Mhm.
throw money at it. And
Yeah.
oftentimes that is the least helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
And so it's so beautiful to hear that you've made a career, uh, a really phenomenal career that's not even halfway done
Thank you.
yet. If we look at the numbers, let's be real, going to be doing this
We'll
forever.
see. Yeah, long.
But you've made a career out of just trying to make things better for people, utilizing a really, really kind of creative way in a well-documented process and methodology.
Mhm.
I do have a question for you that
Mhm.
you said when you were gracious enough to tell me about your mother and your father and how they
Hmm.
both had elements of service, but they did it kind of one brown and one purple. I love the way
Hmm.
that's set up. You now as a mother,
Hmm.
I'm curious, what are you seeing in your children? Because they're at ages now where you
Yeah.
start to see what they get from you and what they get
Oh
from
yeah.
your husband, right? What are they getting from you on this?
From all of this, or what do they get? Um, yeah, yeah, well, that's a good question. I think what we hope they get, what they do get, there's definitely, I think living in the city brings a lot of things, like I guess if I think of my life as, design in the social sector or trying to use human-centered design to make, again, to make things better, to make things less worse for people.
Mhm.
Um, I think they get both of that. Like my husband's also a designer, and also has done a lot of work in this space. And so we the way that we set up our house, we're very intentional about things. And so I think they probably, hopefully we're not messing them up, but they're we're very particular about things. It's probably why it's taking us a really long time to move into our place, because we want everything to be a certain way. But like even like their bedrooms, there's intention behind how those are set up and certain colors or how things work together. And a lot of it's like it's both, design, but design and efficiency. And I think we talk about design, and not in a designy way, but just in a like a problem solving way, and a lot of like how we want things to work, and how, Antonio is my husband is a like incredible systems designer. The whole house is like on a system. He's got everything ordered and um working like a system. And so I think that maybe they see that, or they're growing up in a house that's organized in that kind of way, and that's run in a certain systemic way. um and then I think on the maybe social sector side, being in the city is different than I think being in the suburbs. Even where I grew up, right outside the city, my kids would go to the Walt Disney Magnet School right off Lakeshore Drive, and there are tents um across, people sleeping
I live
outside
right down the
their
street from
school.
there. I live right behind
Yeah.
Fort Worth Hospital. I
Yeah.
live right down the street from Disney. Yeah.
Yeah, so that they see that there is, with all the migrant families that are here, there's the building next to their school is housing, so many people right now. And so we talk about it, we see it, we do things to try to, I feel completely helpless, and like there's never enough we can do, but we try to involve them in different things. I'm Jewish, we were celebrating Hanukkah. We had,
Mhm.
had the kids doing certain things during Hanukkah to like put together bags, driving in the city,
Mitzvah.
you hand
We do
out different
mitzvah,
things.
right?
Yeah, so you like involve the kids in contributing, and then knowing that it's their responsibility, and to to help and to take care of people. So again, it feels very little to assemble a toothbrush and some, things in a gift
Mhm.
card in a bag to hand out to people on the street. But there's some little things and bigger things that we try to do to we try to, I don't know what they necessarily, who knows what they will pick up, but I think they see us doing certain things to do that. And I think Antonio would talk a lot about work at dinner. Maybe that's boring. I don't know if they, if they probably just want us to stop talking, but I think we're very honest about, and not afraid to tell them things. Sometimes maybe we go too far and maybe tell them more than we should, but I think we talk about things. We don't we shield them from things, but we also expose them to things that um, I don't know, are important to us and that are happening outside our house. And so I guess I'll see what they take as they keep going, but I think they're quite sensitive. And my son is definitely, he's 9, and says a lot of things that I can tell that this is so, seeping into him, and how he and questions he has and things that he wants to do. So
So interesting
yeah.
when we think about, like I was very fortunate. I grew up in a wonderful household. My parents are the greatest human beings ever.
Hmm.
Hardworking, just amazing, would give anything to anybody at any time. But what we knew about the human condition in the late
Hmm.
70s, early 80s is a lot different than what we know about it
Of
now.
course. Yeah.
And so, I've heard people say things like, "Oh, like in the 50s they had kids, and in like the 70s,
Yeah.
they lived with kids, and but like now we're now raising kids." And I
Yeah.
think that like it's going to be really interesting to see when our children, again, like we have our kids are right around the same ages in some ways, like same
Hmm.
generation, I guess, but like when they're adults the world's
Mm-hmm.
going to be so different and
Yeah.
unique.
It's been a
And
while.
the way that I hear you talk about how you raise them, about illuminating them to challenges,
Mm-hmm.
showing them a way that things can be better and a way to do things in a certain way. I think that I'm hoping the world will be a much different and somewhat better place because we're going to have really intelligent kids that maybe
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
start with empathy as a point of trying to understand why these problems exist rather than just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just told my wife a story last night. It was like the most horrible thing is like when I moved to this new neighborhood, these kids were making fun of this. An Asian kid moved into our neighborhood. They were making fun of him. And like
Mm-hmm.
to this day, it sticks in my head. And I was like, oh, that's so terrible. Like, is children can be so beautiful and innocent. They can also be so
Mm-hmm.
mean, and terrible. And like I think now, like that the way we try to raise our kids, it sounds like you is the same. Is like understanding the richness that comes from these different cultures. What can we learn? How can we help?
Mm-hmm.
I just think hope we're setting our kids up for such great
Mm-hmm.
success.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I
It's
didn't tell
hard.
you ahead of
Yeah.
time. I might ask you about parenting,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'm at this stage in life where 90% of my conversations end up talking about parenting.
Yeah, I know. It takes up a lot. It's a lot of time and energy. But I guess another answer to that question is just gratitude. I think I've realized I was mentioning to you earlier, just the series of all the things that have happened in the last couple of months where we moved, which was nuts, and then October 7th happened, and
Mhm.
there's war in Israel and Gaza, and that's been very difficult on so many levels. My son broke his foot. I got laid off. Like all these things kind of happened in a big series, and we're really at the same time we're so lucky. Like we have lots of resources, we have lots of privilege, and I think that's something having two kids who are coming from where they're coming from. I think we let them know how much privilege they have, and not to be me, not to knock them down, but like really trying to teach gratitude and to help them appreciate what they have and how lucky they are.
Dude, if my
So
kids heard this podcast, you would see them.
yeah,
They'd be like, if I hear dad say gratitude and kindness one more time, because
yeah,
that's my thing. Like,
yeah,
there's two rules in the house: gratitude and
yeah,
kindness. Be grateful and be
yeah,
kind. That's it. Everything else
yes.
we'll figure out. But
We
like,
try. It's hard, but
yeah,
we
yeah, it's
try.
really no, they're
Yeah,
teenagers. Are you kidding me? Um,
yeah,
so let me ask you. I totally have like now. I
yeah,
just need to like again. My brain just goes. Okay,
yeah.
you've done so much cool stuff. You've done so much helpful
Mm,
stuff. We just talked about some of the challenges that are facing the world right now. We talked about parenting. If
mm,
you had, because again, right now you're welcoming in the next opportunity, right? Where is
mhm,
Maris going to land next? What
mhm,
challenge is she going to solve? What great thing? What group of people is she going to help? Um, if there was no budget issue, no time issue, no resource issue, is there a specific challenge, a specific group of people, a specific thing that you're like, if I had the unlimited resources team, this is what I want to go after? Is there a thing that keeps you up at night where like that is the one thing, or is it like you can help anywhere, anytime?
yeah. There are a lot of things keeping me up right now. I don't know that I could go solve them. Um, yeah, I think one thing I wonder, like what in my I say free time. I don't know if it's free time because it's like trying to like raising kids is hard. Raising kids and working is hard.
Mhm.
Um, and we're really lucky. We have it so much easier than so many people. But it's still, and I always say that it's still really hard. I always say I don't know how anyone's not married to my husband and raises kids because he's just incredible with what you know how we manage all of this. I couldn't imagine doing this without him. But
Dude, sidebar. Wait, sidebar. Okay, I told you earlier, like I would stalk the Gravity Tank
uh-huh,
website, right? Be like, okay, I
uh-huh,
got to connect with these people, and then greater good. I'm like, oh, I got to apply there. I'm going to stalk all these people.
uh-huh.
When he Dadwell, I was like,
Oh
I'm going.
yeah,
If
that
I
was
have
pretty
to
awesome.
kill, if I got to
Yeah,
sell one of my
yeah,
kids, that was it.
yeah,
So when we get done here, you got to be like,
yeah,
this old guy over here. Okay,
yeah,
anyway, sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
You
Okay,
guys got to chat.
so you have an amazing
Um,
husband. He's a great
yeah,
father.
yeah,
What are we trying to solve?
and I think we're like because of this design background and I don't know we met at Gravity Tank, and so that we kind of come from this world of problem solving, and so we're always trying to hack or survive our own life, and so um there's something about, I don't know, and maybe because it's very much the world we're in of like working parents trying to survive, and work and do all the, yeah, I guess that's working parents trying to work. It's a little redundant, but like in the time that I have that I'm not doing work, or being with my kids, a lot of it is creating tools or frameworks or things to manage our life. And so there's times when I'm thinking like, would we ever do this? Like how, like create a system or tools or consult or do something to help, you know, parents who are trying to survive and ideally more than survive, to thrive,
Thrive, yeah.
figure out how to do that. So we have, I mean, it's all kinds of different stuff, and I don't know exactly. I don't know. I don't know where it would go, but like we've got like meal planning things. We've got all kinds of systems and things to try to, again, to do all
Wait,
of this. And so,
wait,
yeah,
you
yeah.
have the spreadsheet. You have the greatest
Oh,
spreadsheet.
I know. And I scrapped the spreadsheet. We're on to a product now. So the meal
Dude,
planning spreadsheet. Yeah, I know. That was so geeky,
oh,
but
wait. Okay, hold on. Okay,
yeah.
because now it's bringing me back. I reached out to you. I don't
Hmm.
know. I should look on LinkedIn. I reached out to you. I was like, wait, years ago, you shared this spreadsheet, and it was
Uh-huh.
kind of like if it was like decade by decade or
Oh,
5 years,
yeah.
and it was like,
Yeah,
where was
yeah.
I working? Where was I living? What did I
Yeah.
learn? Where did I go? And I was like, this is the most beautiful
No,
way
thanks.
to think about your life. And again, folks that are listening to this is important. We spend so much time worrying about the future, ruminating on the past in a negative way that we're never present. One of the
Mhm.
best ways to be present is to give gratitude to where you've
Mhm.
been. And I have it somewhere in my Google Drive. I'm
That's
going to put it
awesome.
in the show
Yeah,
notes.
I'll send you a new one if
Okay.
you need
Yeah,
it.
Maris made this spreadsheet that basically it's like a very simple way for folks to look at like every few years, like again, like where was I living? Where
Mhm.
was I working? What was I doing? I think it was like, where did I travel to or who was in my life? And
You know better than I do. I haven't looked at that in a
you
while,
right, it
but
was so
yeah, yeah.
and I when I filled it out, it really
I love
gave
that
me a
you filled it out. I
oh,
love
hell
that you
yeah,
did
dude.
that. Oh,
Oh
you
my
gotta
god.
send me that. I'm so
That
glad you did
thing
that.
people should
Wow.
like if you don't wanna go to therapy, fine. Fill out this spreadsheet. It is so
Oh, great.
therapeutic because it gives you a moment to be like, "Oh my gosh," like, if you are like me and you beat yourself up a lot, you could look back
Yeah.
and be like, "Whoa, I've
Yeah.
lived places, I've done stuff, even though maybe I lived in
Yeah.
the" oh, yes, so now it makes
I
sense.
love it. That's
Yeah,
great.
now it makes
Yeah.
sense. The design and the systems
Mhm.
for Antonio and your, work and passion for designing and making things better, it really what I maybe I cut you off, I think I did, but you were starting to talk about, like, you'd wanna something to help make people's lives easier as working parents? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so much the space I'm living in, and it's, I think one of the things that challenges I've had in the social sector is, um, like, I don't know, being a not being appropriate, but like, I'm a white woman, and so knowing like where it's good for me to play and, um I don't know. I think that's something that I think about when I do the work that I do. I don't speak Spanish. I really wish I can speak some Hebrew. I really wish I spoke more Spanish. Like there's
Mhm.
a lot that I feel like I'm not, um, the right person to do, and I do a lot of work with other people and find partners to do work with to be, to be representative or to be authentic in certain spaces. Um, I think as a parent, like I am a parent, and so I understand that space well. I guess that's one of the things I'm saying. It's like I I feel like that's something that I could contribute to in a meaningful
Yes.
way and not assume certain, I don't know, not like just I have an authentic experience in that world. And so,
Oh,
not in
absolutely.
everybody's parenting world, like everybody has different experiences. And again, I have my my world that I understand. I try to understand other people's world as well. But I think that's something that feels like, again, it's just really hard no matter who you are. I think I don't know anyone who's parenting and finding it to be really easy.
Yeah,
So,
don't check social media. You got these yahoos out there like,
you know,
"My kids are" you're like, "No, no,
exactly.
no, no." And here's the other thing too, is that, it's this mantra Derek Sivers, talks about how simple is not easy and difficult is not hard. You
Hmm.
hear this, right?
Simple is
So
not easy.
think
And
yeah,
oh,
so
that's good. That's
right,
great. I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down.
things that are simple are
Yeah.
like point A to point B, but
Yeah.
things that are easy are not strenuous.
Yeah.
Okay. Things that are difficult are multi-step. They don't make sense. They're difficult steps and stages to go through. Things that are
Yeah.
hard are grueling and hard. So
Yeah.
the example is a marathon. A
Mhm.
marathon is simple. Put on your
Mhm.
shoes, run 26.2 miles, right?
Mhm.
It's not difficult, meaning you don't have to like do a hula hoop and then walk on your hands and then
Mhm.
it's like no, just run from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
so it's simple, but it's hard. It's
Yeah.
grueling physically and
Yeah.
emotionally. So, I
Yeah. That's
think
really
about
cool.
again, and when we think about parenting, I
Uh-huh.
think that people that like we're talking about parenting and people are
Mhm.
going to listen to this, like, I thought she was a designer. Marc was saying she's the greatest designer in the world. Yeah, but parenting is so unique because if you find it to be difficult, it's because
Mhm.
you're doing it well, because you
Yeah.
care.
Huh.
Because the only way to really parent well is to care deeply.
Yeah.
Right? What was that radical candor? Care deeply, challenge directly,
Yeah.
like that thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I always tell my kids, I got a bit of my grandfather had a temper, my dad had a temper. I got a little, but
Mhm.
if I'm yelling, it means
Yeah.
I love you. Because if I didn't give a
Yeah.
shit, I'd let you do whatever you want and you'd never
Yeah.
hear from me. But when I get so animated and so passionate that I'm like, yes or no,
Mhm.
that's because I care so deeply. So again, I think that
Yeah.
parenting can be viewed as difficult, meaning it can go a million different ways and it's confusing because we're so invested in trying to do the best job we can at it to raise
Mhm.
good humans, because that's
Yeah.
what we need. We don't need more devices. We don't need more candy. We need good
I
humans that are
know.
empathetic and kind and helpful and intelligent and creative and collaborative.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you.
This
Yeah.
is so awesome, man. I can't believe now wait, we will
Oh,
tell people.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I like
I
blew by
play
the way.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this
Sun
is
is
like good
going down and I
therapy.
I didn't plan for this. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so my brothers and I, we grew up going to Grateful Dead shows, right?
Mhm.
Traveling around seeing the Grateful Dead. And every time I go to like a concert with my brothers, we always
Mhm.
play a game, which is who sees more people that they know. And so, like during
Mm.
halftime, we just sit out in the breezeway, like, oh, hey,
Uh-huh.
I know, and like it'd be like 5-4, 6-3. We
How
all,
funny.
and when I started dating
Were you
my
playing the
wife,
game that day? Oh, okay, go ahead.
yes, that's how we met.
I
So,
had no
so
idea.
so my wife and I think we were dating at the time. No, we were just married at the time. We went to
Mhm.
see the band Mumford and Sons up in Milwaukee.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna play the game. She goes, I'm not playing this game with you. You play she's like, you play it. I don't. It is annoying. I'm like,
That's
I'm
so
playing.
funny.
And so I don't see anybody I know the
Uh-huh.
whole
I had
concert.
no idea that I was like a point in that game. That's
And so, like, it's the end of the night. One thing my wife and I do when we go to shows, we like to like try to be the last people out because we love to people watch, right? So we
uh-huh.
just sit in our
Yep.
seats and we watch the world go by. And we, oh,
Yeah.
it's a person, what a cute couple, this and that. And finally, like, folks, you got to leave. We walk out to the main, kind of hallway
Yeah.
at the Fiserv Arena in Milwaukee. There's nobody there. My wife's like,
Uh-huh.
I got to run to the restroom. I'm the only person in the hallway. You come walking towards me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I know you. And I say to you, I'm like, I know you, but I don't know you. We've never met. But I'm like, you
Uh-huh.
worked at Gravity Tank. And you're like, yeah, how do you know who the hell I am? And then you
That's so
came, and then
cool.
your husband came out and you introduced me to him. And that's how I kind of sort of met him. And that was the first time you and I met in real life,
How funny.
all because
Yeah.
of the stupid game that I played with
I
myself and
mean,
whoever
and all
else would join
because of
along.
Marcus Mumford. All the power to him.
How about it? Yeah, he owes us
I
for
love it.
connecting us.
Right?
Um, Maris, this is awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for one, responding to the crazy LinkedIn messages I send you every few months, two, for making the time, and three, for sharing openly, for being
Yeah.
honest and sharing your story. I hope folks hear this and see that there is a world out there where we can make things different and make things better without just
Mhm.
making stuff first, but maybe asking good questions and
Yes.
centering our solutions and hopes on people. Is there anything that you need help with that the audience can help you with? Are there things you're trying to do, people you want to meet, feedback you need? Is there anything
Oh,
you need help
wow.
with?
Oh my gosh. Did you write that? I think that didn't come through in the email. I thought there was something and it was kind of jumbled and I should have asked, oh, anything I
All
need
right.
help with.
Anything you need help with?
I think right now, um, optimism. I know this is like maybe for I, I, I don't know if it's directed just to me or to everybody. I think I had mentioned earlier, like it's been a really challenging few months, couple months for me dealing with, the situation in Israel and Gaza, and just I think there's so many people who are part of this, on different sides in the middle of it all. I feel very much just torn by all of it. And I think we need, I keep trying to figure out, what do we do? How do we, I feel like I have no power, no, not even power. Like, how can we help? I think that's just, it's just devastating. And I'm seeing so much on all different sides of this, of people just in pain, and sort of lots of blame, and lots of one way, just lashing out. And I understand why. Like, we're all, I think, in lots of pain. um and I'm looking for, like, optimism. Like, how do we move, like, how do we deal with this? How do we help being far away from the location of where this war is happening?
Mhm.
Also knowing that this is not just, it's not an isolated situation, like what
Yeah.
you're talking about previously, about anti-Semitism and all the other things that are happening in our own city. um like, I need hope and methods of, like, what are things we can do? How do we listen to each other? How do we have difficult conversations? Was having a conversation last night with close girlfriends about how do we have these conversations, and with people who have different, you know come from different places, have different
Correct.
thoughts, are also in pain. Like, we're all trying to figure this out. And so it's a very big ask, but I think I'm seeking hope and optimism and strategy for how to connect with people, and hope that this situation gets better before it gets worse, which is the fear. And anyway, that's kind of maybe
Okay.
bigger than what, it's not really a frame. Maybe it is a framework. I don't know. But I think that's kind of the big thing I'm looking for right now, is just, hope and strategy of how we move forward.
Okay.
You've
So
got that.
I'm glad you clarified that, because you said I need optimism, and I was going to tell everybody that listens to this to find you on LinkedIn and send you a
Yeah,
positive message and flood your
yeah,
inbox with
exactly. I mean,
positivity. And I was still going to tell people to do that. So find Maris Garcia on
yeah.
LinkedIn, send her a
Hey.
note of optimism. But more importantly, I'm going to introduce you to somebody
Mhm.
that I think, optimistically, I think that there is a really keen line between the
Mm,
two of you. And I think there's a great opportunity for the two of you to meet and talk. I'll tell you once the episode is over, and I'll gladly make the introduction. But I
awesome.
think with
I
your
appreciate
skill
that.
set, your passion, your background, and with her skill set, passion, background,
Yeah,
and access, I think there could be a really great opportunity for
excellent.
change. So I'm going to make
Thank
that
you.
intro. Of
I really appreciate that.
course.
Anyway, that's
Okay.
a big ask, I know.
No,
Not
so
the typical,
so wrap up.
you know.
I'm gonna put all the great things we talked about, links to Roca, links to
Thank you.
all the places we talked about, and the spreadsheet that I still have in my Google Drive. I'm gonna
Yeah,
share that.
awesome.
Um, but thank you again for sharing. Thanks
Thank
for taking
you.
the time, and thank you for
Absolutely.
thinking differently. Ooh, that was a
Thank
good
you so
ending.
much.
Whoa.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.